Hello and welcome along to the Panto podcast. Just to say thank you so much for all your support, your shares, your likes, and your lovely reviews as well. It really does mean so much. This week my guest is Chris Hayward, who has been Dame for so many years up in the northeast of England. We talk about how he travelled to London, where he came back up to the northeast, and he has been resident Dame at Newcastle for so many years. Chris also shares his story about how he got started in the business, being a Dame and crafting the art of being a Dame. I hope you enjoy. Please sit back and listen to the latest Panto podcast. Well, today I'm joined with the Dame extraordinaire, Mr. Chris Hayward. Hello there.
Hiya.
We've only been chatting for about an hour and a half before. So, Chris, what got you actually started off with theatre?
How I start, my grandmother was a singer. She started off as a dancer, and she realised she had a better voice than being a dancer, so she started dancing, and then she was a singer with a chorus behind her, and then one thing led to another, and then she gave up the dancing, and then she became an actor with her sister, and then she got me into it all. So I was really born in show business. My auntie was a W.J. Jackson girl who was like a Tiller girl, and then I had another auntie who was a singer, so it's really been in the business. Like, my dad's really good, he can play piano and sing, and it's been in my family. That's what it is.
And were they always based up in the northeast?
Yeah, Newcastle, yeah. But it's funny because my nan never worked in Newcastle ever, and she was from here. It was always down south or in the Midlands, doing pantomime, and did Panto in Yorkshire and stuff like that. But she never hit Newcastle. And my aunt, my great aunt, did 2 pantos at Newcastle Theatre Royal, 1939, 1947, and then she did 48 at the Empire Newcastle. And then she had my dad's cousin, I think, is that my aunt? Or my second cousin or whatever. I can't remember. I'm waddling on now. And she was the singer. She was the daughter of the dancer who was at the Theatre Royal.
Did you ever see her perform?
Never. No, never.
But it was in the blood?
Yeah, it's in the blood, definitely. But I'm a twin, but my brother's got nothing to do with show business. He's a painter and decorator. But he likes it. How I started was, I used to see my nan, every Saturday I'd go into Newcastle, see her, and I was on the bus with her, and there was a woman in front, sat on the bus, and my nan said to me, I used to work with that woman over there, I'm sure, Irene Dodds from Newcastle. And I says, what was she? She says she was a dancer. And she says, really? I says, I didn't realise my nan was in show business then. And she says, yeah, I was a dancer and a singer and what have you. So anyway, she tapped at this old woman in front, she turned round, and my nan had worked with this woman in 1933, I think it was, at Newbiggin by the Sea, did a summer season on the sand with a Pierrot show. And it was my great-grandmother's show, and this woman, Irene Dodds, who was sat in front of my nan on the bus, she was one of the chorus. And we got talking, and this old woman had said, I've got a concert party at Biker Community Centre. So the following Saturday, my nan and me traipsed us up to Biker Community Centre, and there was a concert party, all the little kids doing the concert, and she was still teaching dancing and stuff, and that's actually how I got into it. So my nan started singing in the concert party, and my nan started teaching me to dance, tap dance, and also Irene Dodds, and that's how it started. Did concert parties, so that's how I started doing. I never went to a proper dancing school or anything like that. That's how I started.
You just felt it, though.
Yeah, it was in me.
And what about at school? Were you a performer at school?
Not really. I didn't really like drama or anything at school. I didn't really like it. I didn't enjoy it because it was a bit too serious. I was more of the variety side. I liked that sort of thing. And then when we did Christmas concerts, they used to say, can you do this, can you do that? And I would do it, but I didn't really enjoy it. I hated doing it in front of me because I used to get the mick taken out of me, or it was all a bit like that. It was all a bit cagey in those days.
Was it?
Do you know what I mean? Little sissy dancing, little lad dancing. It was all a bit like that. So I kept my side. I never told anybody. And then I did it. I don't know how old I was. I can't remember. my nan asked me, somebody rang her and said they were looking for a lad to play Louis in The King and I at the Tyne Theatre. And she said, does your Chris want to go and audition for it? So I did that, and I got the part. But the problem was I was growing too big to play Louis. So I ended up being in the ballet in The King and I. So I started off as Louis in it, and then I ended up being one of the dancers. And I did Annie Get Your Gun as well. I played Jake in that. I played at the Tyne Theatre when it had just opened. Actually, I was one of the first people to go in the Tyne Theatre when it had been closed for all those years as it being a cinema. Because I remember going in with Jack Dixon and Jean Mellon, and I don't know who they were. It was my nan knew them all, and she took me. And I remember going in. They were turning this big light on, and the theatre all lit up, and there was cobwebs everywhere. It was filthy dirty, and they said they were going to open the theatre at the end of the year, and the amateurs had took it over, and that's why I did The King and I did Annie Get Your Gun there. So that's how it all started.
Do you remember that first time you walked out onto the actual stage?
On that stage at the theatre, yeah, I can remember vividly. I just remember all the ropes hanging and cloths hanging, because I remember the curtains, the tabs, second tabs were gold crushed velvet. I always remember that. And then there was a big pulley at the side. I remember Jack Dixon pulling this pulley, and it opened, but there was a big screen hanging. But the screen obviously had to go on the flies, but that was just stayed there, and you could just see that the full stage was just so dirty. And there was still cloths hanging. I remember there was a cloth at the back, and it had windmills and tulips all painted on it. So that was from the last show that was ever performed on that stage. I don't know what the show was. And I remember also my grandmother's cousin, who was a master carpenter, was one of the guys who worked at the Tyne Theatre and did all the machinery underneath, made all the cogs for the pulleys and the wheels and that sort of thing. But I mean, he was a professional that paid him to do that sort of job.
Did you like the backstage part of it as well?
Oh, I loved it. When we did concerts, I loved it because every different church hall had like a stage, and I used to love being on the stage. I was desperate to see if there was any places with flies, a fly tower. I was infatuated with fly towers.
Did you go up much?
No, not really. I think it's only about 2 years ago since I was at the Theatre Royal. One of the guys took me up to the grid, because I was desperate to go up there, and he took me up. It was a bit frightening, like it's a bit high, but it was good.
We'll come back into that in a bit about the Theatre Royal, because obviously you've flown, haven't you?
I've flown a few times,
And yes, the twins are responsible for some of that as well, aren't they? So,
yeah.
But we'll come into that a bit later on. So what actually got you then to start off into pantomime?
I was a dancer first. I went to Jersey, and then I went and did a pantomime in Preston. Dancing, and I did wardrobe as well, because my partner was director of the show, and then I did the wardrobe, did that sort of thing. Took 1 year off as a dancer, and then I went back the year after as a pantomime. I was an understudy, went on for the understudy, then the management the following year rang me up and said to me, will you do the following year in Panto? Thinking I was going to be a dancer. I thought I was going to be a dancer. But when they rang me up later on, they said it was to play Ugly Sister, and that's how I first got to play Ugly Sister.
What was the understudy role then?
The Wicked Queen.
Did you have fun?
That was the film. I didn't really only went on once, but I was obviously quite good at it. And I made the Queen for the Wicked Queen costume. I remember making that. Because I could make clothes when I don't know how, but I could make clothes. I could use a sewing machine. My gran showed me an old hand machine. I remember her giving me some material and a costume, an old costume she had, and I copied the costume. It was actually a Principal Boy costume, and I just cut it out and made it. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but the idea was there, and she couldn't get over how I could, like, copy something. So I've obviously been able to make some. I've been talented that way. That's how I went to the wardrobe side of it.
In the jeans?
It's in the jeans, yeah. But that's how I got into Panto. The first Ugly Sister was in Preston.
And what was that
I'm not saying
like?
who it was for, but it was horrendous. Panto.
Was it? In what way?
They're still around. Oh, it was just tatty, very tatty, and not very...
Not much.
Not what I'd seen over the years in the big Pantos.
Glamorous.
Yeah, but it got me foot in the door. I had no intentions of being a dame. No intentions whatsoever. I loved dancing. I loved tap dancing. I didn't like I hated singing. I was never a singer. I was a dancer.
What about now though with the singing? Because you've got
Well, I've never really classed myself as a singer. I'd put a number over, but I'm not a singer. I've got quite high range, you know what I mean? I don't know when to stop sometimes. No. I liked that. I did like dancing. That was my main thing. And just playing my first Ugly Sister, I remember the management saying, you've done really good. And then the following year, it just snowballed and snowballed and snowballed. Then I did Epsom the year after that. Then I did Darlington. And then that's when it snowballed. It got bigger and bigger. And also, it helped me to make my own costumes as well, because I didn't have to pay people to make stuff. And also when you do Ugly Sister, you used to move from one theatre to another theatre. So you didn't have to have new costumes every year. Like this year, I'm thinking now for the Panto, because being in Newcastle, you've got to change your costumes every year. Mm-hmm. And it costs a fortune to do it. Because feathers don't come cheap now, and I love my feathers.
We can tell, yeah.
And sequins.
How did you prepare them for that first role as Ugly Sister?
The first one, I was doing a summer season in Jersey, and when they rang me up and said, do you want to do Sister? And I said yes. And actually, John Inman was doing the play at the Opera House in Jersey. And he was the one who like started saying, oh, why don't you wear this and have a snow costume and have that costume? And it was actually him who started me having comedy ideas, because the costumes I'd made for the first year were a bit just dresses with crinolines and a wig and what have you. And it was him who got me to wear mannequin wigs, because he was one of the first to get the hard wigs, you know, like the shop mannequins. And I think it was Madreno was the first company, they made some wigs. But when you think how much they cost now and what they were then, I think they were 25 quid each then. And what you pay like 350 quid a week now for one wig, aye.
And how many wigs do you go through in a show?
Per outfit, I've had 13 this year, 12 or 13 this year.
I know I've seen in other dressing rooms wigs and they'll have the words Chris Hayward written underneath them. And they do the rounds, don't they?
Oh, they do, yeah. I get rid of them. But that's how I started.
And what about the preparation then for actually the wickedness of being an Ugly Sister?
Well, I was never the wicked one, really. I don't think I was the nice one. It was when I first did it, was with Simon Bashford. He was more wicked than me, I would say. To be truthful, I can't remember a lot of being Ugly Sister. I remember more doing Ugly Sister with David Raven, because I did about 9-10 pantos with him, I think. And we did 2 with Simon. Actually, I wasn't supposed to be doing panto with Simon. Simon was a dancer on the show with me in Jersey. And it was a friend of mine was going to do Ugly Sister. He was a dancer, and we got on, really had a good laugh and everything. And then he got 7 braids for 7 brothers in the West End, and he just says, I can't do panto, I'm saying for a year. And that's how I asked Simon to do it.
And that was it.
And we got on. We were really good friends. I mean, he's a big agent now in London, but he still does panto. He still does. He did, I don't know, he did about 10, 11 years as Sister, something like that, with somebody else after we finished.
So you said then you didn't actually want to become a dame as...
Well, I didn't know. I've seen dames in panto and that, but I didn't really think, oh, I want to be a dame. It was never really in my head to be a dame. Because dames, I think, when I was little, were always older. There was no young dames. They were, well, I mean, they might have been young, but they were old to me. Like John Inman and Barry Hayward and Billy Dainty and Terry Scott. The dames to me were always fatter. The youngest, the thinnest dame I ever seen was obviously John Inman and Danny LaRue. They were the like thin, glamorous sort of dames.
And is that where you kind of replicated the look from, or got part of your look from?
I would say more from John Inman. I would say myself. Cause I was very close to him. I loved John. He was such a nice person, and we got on really well together. And he did help me. I remember in his living room showing me how to do his strip routine. What I do is the same as his, because he showed me in the living room. That it's actually his strip that I do. I mean, not the same costumes and everything, but it's the tempo and the way he used to do it and the way he skips and all those little things. But then a bit of Danny LaRue rubbed off with working with him. when you're on stage working with somebody and you watch them, things rub off. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I've got quite feminine hands anyway, and the way I mean, like Michael will say, he says, "You're just like Danny Rue. Sometimes you work like him. The way you glint in your eye and the way your hands, your mannerisms. But I can't help that. Is just me as a person. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to be Danny Rue. It just comes out that way."
What about Danny? Before you actually worked with him, did you ever see him perform?
Yeah, loads of time. I seen him at the Theatre Royal the first time. I mean, I never ever thought I'd ever work with him. It was just by chance because I'm only 5 foot, 7.5, 5'8", and all his dancers were like 6 foot, usually, or 5'10", 5'11". And I first met him in Jersey. That's where I first met. He came over to do a charity show. No, he came actually over on a holiday first, for a long weekend. And then the year after he came and did a charity show, and that's how I met him. And I kept in contact with him, odd phone calls here and there. That's how I actually met him.
They sound very approachable, these people.
Yeah. There's a lot of people like that in show business. There's some horrible ones as well. Like, I'm not going to mention them.
Not on air anyway.
No.
So when you actually had that first experience on the stage in the frock as Dame solo, was that quite daunting?
I'll say I was never as as a dame or
when
an
you're
ugly
actually
sister?
Dame, yeah.
When I was the first dame, I'll tell you what, I'd done Ugly Sister for a few years, and then I was with Danny LaRue in Blackpool doing the season, and I remember him saying to me, "Are you doing Panto this year?" And I said, "I'm waiting because of something to come up." And nothing was coming. Well, I had been offered a Panto, but would refuse because I didn't like the venue. Bit of a snob I was, but I didn't want to do the venue. And Danny said, "If you don't do a Panto, you can come and do Stockport with me as a dancer, and you could be Slave of the Ring, if you want." And he says, "But that can be done at the last minute. If something else comes up as Dame or Ugly Sister, then take that." And it was getting nearer and nearer the time. And it was actually John Conway rang me up and said to me, "Will you play Widow Twankey for me at Crawley with the Chuckle Brothers and Maddie Cryer, who I'd met? She was doing summer season in Blackpool with Billy Pearce at the Grand that year." And I was like really excited, but then I was a bit worried because I thought, I'm only in my 20s, I'm the same age as Maddie Cryer, and I'm playing Widow Twankey. And I was a bit, And I spoke to Danny about it, and Danny says, "You're a bit young to do it, really." He wasn't really with me. He says, "Stick it, Ugly Sister, you're too young." And that's how I got to being Dame. And also, I had to make a complete new set of costumes.
Did you find it difficult, though, being Dame?
No, I didn't find it. Again, shouldn't we say this? I felt I was too young, and I knew I wasn't right. And the director, I'm not going to mention, who was quite a famous person, Dame, and done Panto for years and years before that, I think he didn't like me to start with because of my age. When I was actually told, it was somebody in the show told me, he doesn't like you, he says you can't do it. He was a bit peeved that they'd booked somebody my age to play Widow Twankey. But when I got on stage, I always remember the opening night, he came to the dressing room, knocked on the door, and he said to me, he says, "Well, you've really pulled it out the hat." He says, "I think you're really good and you're going to go far." I remember him saying that to me. He says, "I didn't like you to start with." He said, "I knew you were too young." But he says, "You've took everything I've showed you on board." And he was good because he was old school. He was very much like a Nat Jackley sort of Dame because I'd seen him in Dame before. And he's the one who taught me to do all the slides, which I don't really do now in Newcastle. I used to start with, where you put the heel taps on your boots and you slide when you walk as if there's something on the floor. You're always sliding. He taught me to do that.
And after that, was the run nice?
After that, yeah, the run was lovely. It was only for a month's run. It wasn't very long. And then the year after that, David Lee rang me up, I think, and said, would I do Canterbury Panto with David Raven, who was one of the Trollettes. The Trollettes was a double act in the 70s and 80s, very famous on the drag scene in London. And I was like, I can't. I'd seen David do his drag act, and he was a bit vicious. Oh, he was very funny, and I thought, I'm a bit too nice to work with somebody like that. But he said, no, go and have a meeting with him. Just meet him. And it was a Wednesday night at the Two Brewers, and I went to the front. I wasn't really into the gay scene or clubs, anything like that. And I remember going and seeing the door of the club and going in and said, can I see David Raven? Do you know where his dressing room is? And I remember him laughing at me, the bloke at the door. He said, dressing room, it's a toilet. So I remember going, knocking on the door, going in. He says, come in. And I went in. And from that minute, I got on so well with him. And the day after I rang David, I said, listen, I'll do the Panto in Canterbury with him. We'll get on really well. But then again, I had to sort all of his costumes out because he'd done Sister with Jimmy Trollet for a few years with John Nathan Turner, but he'd give up Panto, and they'd got rid of their costumes and stuff, so we had to sort all his costumes out. And that was a little bit of history with him. I think we did about 8, I can't remember how many Pantos, about 8 or 9 Pantos with David Raven. We did the first Panto in Dubai together. I remember that. We went to Dubai and did Cinderella, and that's where I met Paul Zerden.
Was that enjoyable, doing it in Dubai?
Oh, brilliant, yeah.
What's it like over there?
I love Dubai. It's nothing like it is now. I mean, the World Trade Center. The Panto was in the World Trade Center, and it was for international artists. Who used to have the Bradford Panto and Edinburgh and that Hull had, and we had 3 weeks rehearsal, 2 weeks in London and a week's rehearsal over there, and it was mainly expats. They came to see the Panto. I mean, there's a lot of Arabs come to see the show with their scarves on, and I remember one performance. There was somebody really wealthy and famous over there. I don't know whether it was Sheikh or somebody, and they took the first 3 rows of the front out, and they had carpets, and they had like these big thrones and table with stuffed food and everything on, and we had to do the show, and everyone else sat around them, and they sat at the front. But I don't know who they were.
Did they get it?
They loved it. But there were some rules as well. We weren't allowed to touch Cinderella's hair or touch her, because you couldn't touch a woman in Dubai then. Because still quite strict, the rules over there. But you couldn't touch Cinderella's hair or pull her back and forwards, anything like that. And we couldn't get ponies to pull the coach in. We had to have a camel. Camel.
Would you like to go back out there and do another one?
I don't know. Well, in the summer, I wouldn't want to do it at Christmas because I like it here too much. I'd go back and work there. I love Dubai. I've been to Dubai so many times now. So many times to Dubai I've been. But it's nothing like it is now. I mean, there was no history or anything there. It was just sand and hills, and Jumeirah Beach, which is all the hotels now, that was just a beach. One little tiny museum. We stayed in a lovely hotel. There was a taxi company we could use, but I loved it for the fabric shopping.
So you've still got the eye for it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to New York in April. I'm going shopping for Panto for fabric for this year. That's not the reason I'm going, but one day will be fabric shopping.
Where do you get your inspiration then from for things like for the next year?
Just saying things. I mean, we don't know what the line is this year, so I don't know. I've not spoken to Michael. I know the story of Beauty and the Beast, but I don't know whether it's going to be a bit different or what. I need to have a meeting with him first, really, just to talk about it. I've got some ideas. I've got like a list of ideas. But I just need to know definitely what we're going to be doing so I can start buying fabrics and stuff. But if I see something, like just before last Christmas, I was in a shop and I just seen this fabric. I thought, that'll make something lovely. So I bought 10 metres of it. So that's just next door in a bag. But I've got hundreds of bags from over the years.
Do you ever like to knock something up for other people as well as yourself?
I used to years ago. I don't now. No, I mean I used to make. I don't make anything now. I tart things up. I'll bead stuff. I stone stuff and that. But I don't make anything. Saying that though, this year I'm going to make a couple of things. I think. because I made for the photo shoot for Beauty and the Beast, the poster, I made that costume within a day and a half. Because we did a photo shoot the year before for it, but then Michael didn't like it. It had to change. So I didn't have a costume to wear. But I had some fabric, so I just actually cut it out here on the floor here. And made it in a day and a half. That's the only time I had. And I had to rush over to Bladen to get some trimming, because it was too late to order anything online. I had the wig already, and I had the teapot already. But I'll wear that. It's not finished off. I mean, the front of it looks all finished. The back's not only for the photo shoot.
How long then does it take you to actually create a costume once it's actually perfected?
It depends what the costume is. I'm really quick at making things.
You're one of these people who stays up all night long.
Yeah, I will, but I work better at night. I couldn't sit and do something in the daytime. I'd rather work till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning doing it, with the TV on and a cup of tea. It's the space that's the problem, because when I was in London I had a bigger space to do stuff, but now since I've moved back up here I've only got a flat and I've got a living room, and it's like having to put everything out, and I'm just thinking that table there, that doesn't belong here, it's from my new house. If I've had to bring it in here, I had nowhere to put it.
What's been your favourite costumes over the years?
You know the bag costume I had last year?
Mm.
I love that. I love gimmicky costumes. I like that. I love that. I love my opening from... What was it? Snow White, was it? I think it was Snow White. I loved that costume. Brad didn't make that. Mary Ann, friend of mine. She made that costume. But all my feather stuff, I used to make all that. I don't make any of that now. I get the feathers and I get all the fabrics myself. Unless, like, James has a load of fabric and down where he is. And if he's got something, he'll send me a sample and say, "Would you like this?" And I say, "Oh, get me 10 metres of that," or whatever. I forget things, me, though. I've done so much, I do, and I forget all the years. It's like I said to Dan, I says, "How many pantos have I done this year?" And he says, "Well, if you count how many I did in Newcastle, when I started, it's 35. So I think this year's my 35th panto. Beauty and the Beast, me 35.
Mm. And did they blur into one after a while?
Yeah. I can remember Darlington, Panto, quite vividly with the Chuckle Brothers and Jimmy Cricket, Hussein Bashred. I can remember that. But Epsom, I can't remember that much. I can't remember much of that one. So I've only been on the computer since I came up here. What, 12 years ago?
Mm.
And I've only had an iPhone for about 10 years. Before that was now Nokia.
But they're great though. They make life so much easier.
God, everything's so much easier
Amazon
these days.
and
Yeah.
I'm sure Amazon for you
And
with the
Google,
fabrics.
yeah, totally. Alibaba.com. All over the world, just buy fabric. You see something and just, I have 10 metres of that, order it. It's just where I would have to go to London for a weekend and then stay Paul with my friends and then just have to go to here, there. Do you know what I mean? Sourcing stuff, and just it's totally easier now to do things than you could do years ago.
But then what about like going off to markets in India or whatever? Did you
Well, I mean, Thailand is one. I was in Thailand a couple of years ago and I came back with so much fabric for when I did Cinderella. Most of that fabric was from Thailand. It's just so much cheaper and you get a holiday out of it.
So maybe technology isn't always a good thing when it comes to...
No, it's not. It's best to see it, because you see stuff like, excuse me, the fabric I had for last year for my finale was from South Africa. But I got that on the internet. But when it arrived, it was absolutely beautiful and it wasn't cheap. I could have actually got it in London the same sort of price, but the quality was beautiful quality, but it wasn't what it was what I seen it. It didn't tell you on the internet what both sides of the fabric had different borders. So when it arrived, and I'd spent a load of money on it, I thought, the costume I've drawn out, I can't make with that fabric. Because one side, the Selva Jade, was very thin, but the other one was really heavily beaded, well, sequined. Mm. And the way the pattern of the dress was, I couldn't work it out. So actually my finale costume for last year is nothing what I drew out. James had to design that.
How did you first then get involved with Newcastle? or Newcastle, shall I say?
Well, I was doing. I worked for FFE for Kevin Wood. I did Stoke, the brand new Aladdin, Terry Parsons Aladdin, out of this world costumes and sets, beautiful. It was a canny panto. I mean, nothing like what we do in Newcastle now. It's different, totally different. But I provided all my own costumes. And because Terry Parsons, I love him as a designer, panto designer. I always have done. And I was hoping he'd design some costumes for me. But he didn't. There was nothing in the budget. I had to provide my own stuff. But he said, we'll provide your finale costumes so it'll blend in with everybody else's. And Paddy Dickey was going to be making the finale costume, who made all Stanley Baxter's costumes, Danny LaRue's Mother Goose, Billy Dainty's, Terry Scott's. She was the best dame costume maker. Anyway, she passed away before the panto started, and she was really ill and what have you. So he said, we can't use her to make the costume. So he said, would I make the costume myself? The budget was, I'm not telling him, it was a big budget. And I said, I wasn't peeved off about it, but I just thought, well, I've made all my own stuff. I know it'll fit and everything, but I wanted something that she'd made. But anyway, so I forgot what the question was.
Your involvement with Newcastle. How did that
begin? Sorry, I was doing. I'm going off the story now.
You're fine. It's your podcast.
How did I get into Newcastle? I was doing Stoke Pantomime. Michael Harrison had seen me, I think, the year before in Woking, and he knew of me. I'd met Michael a few years before when I worked for Michael Rose in Poole, and he worked for whoever. And then I was doing the Stoke Panto. I'd agreed I was going to do Milton Keynes. Then I was going to do Sunderland with Mickey Rooney, his sister. And that's when Michael rang me up and said to me, would you do Widow Twankey for me, Newcastle? And I said, I've agreed to do Sunderland, his ugly sister. And he says, yeah, but you're from Newcastle, you're from Sunderland.
Bit of old blackmail.
Yes, and it was a bit like that. And I felt guilty because I was a bit dubious about doing Newcastle, although I was desperate to do it. I thought, but if I do Newcastle and they don't like me, and I don't do Sunderland, I've worked for them for 3 years, they might not use me again. I've dropped myself in it. Mm. And that was the back of my mind. And then there was a bit of a shuffle back and forwards. I rang Kevin, I said I've been offered that. And then I rang Michael, and then I ring back Kevin up again. Kevin actually was in New York when I rang him. Or getting some big movie star to do one of his pantos. And it was back and forwards a bit like that. And then in the end I rang Michael and said, oh, I'll do Newcastle. And that's how I got Newcastle.
Was that quite a challenge going on to that stage? Because it was established. Was it established when you joined?
Yeah, I think Michael had it for 2 years before that. He'd got established and he'd put his own stamp on the pantos for 2 years. They were a bit different. He had good ideas, and Clive and Danny, who I'd met Clive and Danny years before when they did Goldilocks in Darlington. I'd never worked with them. And that's how I got into Newcastle. And I thought, well, I'll only be here a couple of years sort of thing, and I'll just plod on, go somewhere else. And then I've been here ever since.
How many years is it now?
13 years, I think it is.
13 years. Mm-hmm. And it's just built and built.
It's built up and built up and built up. It's got bigger and bigger and bigger.
Where did the catchphrase come from?
Michael.
Was it? Yeah,
he wanted to have a catchphrase. And he just said, say that. It was in the script anyway. When I got it, it didn't have an intent to have a catchphrase. Hello, me Bonnie Bairns.
Hello, me Bonnie Bairns. Beautiful. Nice and simple. Warming.
Yeah.
It's become yours.
It is mine now, I'm pleased. I'm pleased. I never thought I'd have one like. But
do people shout it out much to you?
All the time. Like the taxi driver, when they come here, they'll always say it. Because I know the taxi drivers in the taxi company. They often say it. And then odd kids you'll see, and you talk. Like there's a few times I've been in Morrison's or a supermarket, and I've been like talking to the one behind the cash, and somebody behind me will say to you, you don't do the pantomime theatre royal, do you? Because I think my voice is totally different when I'm on stage, but apparently it's not.
No, not really. It's pretty much
But
a bit more of an extension.
but when I did,
but
but when I did Dame of before I did Newcastle, I didn't play Dame at all. Like Michael's got me doing it now. Not at all. I was quite posh. My voice was quite posh. It was very different.
In what way?
Just totally different. Totally different. And then he says, don't do it in a Geordie accent. I sometimes do go a bit posh sometimes when I'm saying something. I think we'll try and keep back into the Geordie bit.
How long did it take you to actually find your inner Dame then?
I think that it's changed over the years. I mean, my favourite Dame I always remember when I was little watching him in Meet in the Wings, even, or watching him in Panto, was George Lacey. George Lacey was, there was something about him. But he had quite a posh voice. And I used to try and walk like... I remember when I was little, I used to walk a bit like him. I'd come home and try and walk a bit the way... Because he used to do that slide as well. I think that must have been the way old-fashioned dames did. I mean, he started Dame in the 20s, early 20s.
Yeah, it must have been then.
When he did it. But he was the first dressy sort of Dame, changed costumes. But like, I don't know, Terry Scott always had different costumes, John Inman had different costumes. But I would say it was George Lacey was the main one who I liked. And then when I first seen John Inman, I loved John Inman's Dame. Because I always thought dames had to be quite fat. They were more funny looking, having today's sort of fashion but in a fat woman sort of thing, and a man dressed as a woman. I love George Lacey, he was my favourite. I just wish there was more clippings on YouTube or anything like that. There isn't anything about. There's not really many photographs of him. There's not many photographs. I don't know what's happened to all the stuff that he had. I don't know if there's any family left who were relatives of him.
All those wonderful costumes and...
I know. Well, some of the costumes, I know Freddie Lee's had some of the costumes in his house in Streatham. He had some costumes with George Lacey's costumes.
What happens to your old costumes then?
I've sold a load of them to Kudos. Use them. They've got so many pantos, they need so many costumes in. The thing is, Teresa hasn't got to worry about me, because I'll just find out what the finale costumes is and I'll blend in. Do you know what I mean? She's got nothing to worry. I mean, I don't know how she does her job. I really don't.
Because it's all very much Dame specific, isn't it, now? It's
Yeah.
You create that character, it becomes an extension of you, the costume.
It is the costume. People come and see me. I mean, there's some people come and see the Panto. There's a woman comes from down south, on the south coast, every year, and she knows every costume. She's got a book, and everything's written. Every year I've been in the Panto, she's written down what I've worn. And I still have to sign the book every year.
Do you keep much yourself? Photos, things like that?
Not really. I've got clipping. My dad keeps everything. My nan used to keep everything. I don't take photographs backstage. I just don't bother. I used to when I was younger. I just think, why bother? Do you know what I mean? There's DVDs and videos of all the Pantos now, and if I want to see something, I just ring up Kudos and say, have you got a DVD so I can just see what I've got? Some of I used to keep all the costumes. My dad's house next door has 2 rooms which were absolutely, I mean, the size of this, jam-packed with costumes and headdresses, wigs, pieces, those sort of things. But only a couple of years ago I sold about 90 odd costumes, and then this year I've sold all these costumes. Q's just got them. Because also Alan Stewart's the same size as me and he wears up in Edinburgh, because I think they've got Goldilocks this year, so he'll be wearing a lot of the comedy stuff. The glam stuff, he doesn't like the glam stuff.
The bee, the honey pot.
Yeah.
How long does it take you then from script to actually really get into the parts?
You mean in rehearsals?
Well, when you actually get the script.
Well, my part's always the same in Newcastle. I'm just fitted into the Panto, so I don't change the character or play anything. I'm always the same. I'm Rita. If it's Cinderella, or I'm the fairy Rita, or whatever, or if it's Jack and the Beanstalk, I'm Jack's mother. I'm exactly the same. There's no different. I think
Pretty
an actor
much
would have
like-
it. I'm not an actor. I'm just a person who's got a personality, and Newcastle likes that personality. That's what it is.
Do you think the personality of Rita?
It's the personality of Rita. That's what the
is-
audience like. I don't think it's me because they don't
you-
really know me. Do you know what I mean? I might be horrible. I don't know. I mean, I've got no enemies. I don't think I get on with anybody. I can talk to anyone, and I get on with everyone. But I just think the Newcastle audience likes somebody of their own sort of person. They like me as Rita, and it's just an extension of me, really.
How much of it would you say you put in of yourself?
The camp side of me a lot.
Never. Mainly the campsite, the mumsy part of it.
I
there.
think
Do you
I
that
quite
comes
like the
from?
mum. I like the mumsy. Yeah, the mumsy side of it. I quite like that. I like that part. Yeah.
Because everybody loves Rita as like their own mum, don't they?
Yeah.
And just seeing her there. And
You see, I don't see it. I don't know. I just think I don't see. I mean, people say I'm big in Newcastle. I just don't see that myself. That I'm known in Newcastle. I just think I go and do the Panto every year. I'm not starry-eyed at all. I'm not grand. I like nice things and everything, and I don't know.
Is it weird though seeing yourself on the billboards and things like that?
It used to be. Yeah, it doesn't now. I just think, oh, that's me. Same face, different wig, different frock.
Because I know when I've seen the production, and you look at the old ladies, especially,
Oh, they love it.
they're just you're the highlight for them.
I know they do. That's my crowd. That's my crowd. They love that. And they love you being a bit risky. They love that sort of thing. They like that. And they love the legs. They love seeing your legs. Now, obviously, haven't you got beautiful legs? Well, I might have beautiful legs for a woman, but not for a bloke. Look, crap in shorts. And I think also, because I'm really tidy and clean, my makeup's always fresh. You never see me sweaty on stage. I mean, I've got a powder puff in the wings, constantly, my dressers. I've got the best dress in the world, Ali. I would never do the Panto with her. I love her to bits. Because she just knows how I work. A lot of me changed. This year, they weren't that quick, to be true. There was a couple of quick ones. But that's another thing. You've got to be able to work with somebody well. Your dresser's got to be really there on board.
When it comes
She
to
panics more than I panic. I just laugh. If I'm late, I laugh. And she panics more than I do.
ever had instances like that?
I've had a few times where the zip's gone. Saying that, this year I had a panic in the lion tamer costume. Was it the opening night? I think it was the opening night. I was one the dress rehearsal. I actually fell on stage in the dress rehearsal. No, it wasn't. I think it was the opening night? I can't remember.
Opening night, yeah.
Was it? Did I fall?
Yeah.
And I fell and got and carried on, and I really hurt my thumb. And I got up and carried on, but I didn't realise that the costume was split all down the side. Did you notice that?
I didn't notice that, no.
Well, it was all split from under the arm right down the side. And I didn't realise that it was split, so I went off and took the costume off, and Ali just hung it straight up. For the next show, there was a bit of space, but my thumb was so sore. It's only a matter of weeks that this has got better. So I've been having to put stuff on my thumb and everything, and today strap it up and what have you. So she put the costume on, and I went, oh God, this is so loose. And she went, it's ripped the side. All down here was totally ripped. And I had to have two dressers with, there's always thread and a needle ready. And one had to start from the top, and one had to start from the bottom to get to the middle, and then just stitch it. And with massive big hooks. And then Ali, after the show, had to take it upstairs, and I had to take the lining out. And so, but that was a panic. That was a real panic. A real panic, that was.
Coming from a design point of view, do you like to make sure the costumes are workable?
They've got to be. I hate costumes that aren't workable. I hate it. Like, it's a lot of dames where their costumes are so tight or big headdresses and they can't work. They just stand there, and I could never do that. I could never do it. It's not me at all.
Least favourite costumes over the years?
My least favourite costumes. can't really think of any. I really haven't got any that I've like, not really like. I think I've liked everything. If I didn't like something, I wouldn't wear it. I couldn't wear somebody else's costumes.
No.
No, I couldn't. I wouldn't be happy.
It's got to be fresh.
Oh, yeah. I like new costumes. That's why I like doing Newcastle, because they're new every year. But I'm quite a clean person anyway. As soon as my costumes, I finish the panto, they come back home, everything, well, not everything's clean, because some of the stuff you can't clean, but all inside my wigs, I have a sponge with hot water, all the makeup's washed out, I dust all the tops with a wet sponge to get all the dust, because you get dust backstage. All my feathers are steamed, all the necks, I'm not a sweaty person, as I said, but on the arms, they don't sweat under my arms anymore, but you get makeup in the collars. All the white stuff's washed, me bloomers, and everything's like that. And everything's got to be packed perfectly, put in the bags and put away. Some people just don't. They just put them straight in the hang and put them out.
Have you ever had to be in somebody else's costume before?
I don't think I have. I don't think I've ever had it wearing somebody else's costume. I've always provided all my own stuff.
You are very lucky then.
I know. And the costume which I made for Stoke, that Aladdin, obviously I made it for the finale, but I made it, it was brand new. But I've seen people wear it now, over the years, and the sleeves have been taken off and it's been used for Cinderella, where it was actually an Aladdin finale costume, but they've took the epaulets off, or they've taken the long sleeves off, and they've taken the skirt off and cut it, and those sort of things.
Is it nice to see your outfits in other productions?
It is, but I'm quite slim. It's just sometimes, like Alan doesn't like crinolines with hoops under, so that always cut. They have to be cut, and he just has a petticoat under it, and I think, well, it spoils it a bit. And he doesn't like wearing headdresses, and I think a headdress finishes a costume off. It always, people like, do you know what I mean? Somebody, they don't say what I say. They'll just wear a wig and the costume, but to me it doesn't fit. It's not finished because I was a headdress to go with it, and that finishes the costume off.
Where do you think that comes from? From your early age, watching some of these performers?
I've always been a fan of the way I dress going out. I've always been like that. I've got an eye for something. I can see something. I can picture something where other people can't see. I can see something finished in my head. Oh, that looked lovely. Those two colours are brilliant. Where other people can't see that. It's the same as my house. Do you know what I mean? I mean, this house isn't Baker, but it should probably be in Jesmond. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, people say that to me. When I lived in London, I lived in Streatham, the last flat, and I remember got broken into, and this policeman said, this should be in Maida Vale, this flat shouldn't be here.
What actually got you to move back up north?
I got pneumonia. I was doing Drowsy Chaperone in London. And I was always been a workaholic. On my days off, I'd be making something, making costume for somebody or that sort of thing. And I was always getting cold, and I had really bad hay fever once, and turned into a chest infection and what have you. When I was doing Drowsy Chaperone, we just opened, and I had the worst chest infection, really bad, and I couldn't breathe. The wardrobe was the top floor, and I remember Debbie, the wardrobe mistress and the costume supervisor from New York, said, you've got to go to the doctors, your chest is so wheezing, and it was awful. And I went to the Medi Centre in Golden Square in London, and the doctor took me in and said to me, you've got pneumonia, you've got a chest infection, you've got pneumonia, there's fluid on your lungs, you've got to go to the hospital now. So I jumped straight into a taxi, went straight to big hospital at the end of Tottenham Court Road. Horrible, hated it. Waited there 4 hours, and the doctor, she said to me, you're all right, you've got hay fever. And give me hay fever tablets, nothing for a chest infection, anything. And I went straight back to the theatre, the same thing. And they said, that's not right. I went back home. I couldn't sleep, couldn't breathe. And that, I think it was the morning after, the doctor I'd first seen at the Medi Centre rang me and asked me what antibiotics have they given you? And I says, they're nothing. They told me it's hay fever. And she went ballistic. And I went straight. She says, can you come back here? We've got a chest doctor here. We want to see you. And I said, well, I'm going to work anyway. She says, you've got to come back. So I went and seen this chest specialist, and they said, you've got pneumonia. They started pneumonia. And they gave me antibiotics, and they signed me off for 6 weeks. And I wasn't at work. And I went back home, and I ended up going staying at Paul Zerden's just to get myself alright, because I lived on my own. And that's when, after that, the show was closed. We got a notice for the show, and I just thought, you know what, London's like, I need to get away. Also, the doctor, Paul's doctor, had said to me, you really should get out of London for a while. And I came back home, and I just thought, you know what, like, Newcastle's not... I used to say I'll never live back in Newcastle, because when I was a kid, I hated it. There was nothing here for me. It was it was very dirty, and it was... I had concrete buildings and everything, and it wasn't a nice place. And I didn't think it was. There was nothing in theatre for me. I wanted to be in show business. And then when I came back, I just thought I could still live here and still go and do my shows in London. Got plenty of people to stay with and tour. You don't need to have a base in London if you're touring. And that's what actually made me want to come back home. It was more the health thing than anything. So I didn't mind living in London, but I was always getting cold, and London. I find London theatres, I think they're a bit different now because they spend money backstage, but years ago they didn't. I mean, they were so dirty, and I mean, when I was a Palladium, you'd come in and you'd see 3 or 4 mice in the bucket of starch, dead, because we used to have to starch the collars for the lads, and you knew those mice, and they were just dirty theatres, and that's when I just thought, oh, I'm going to come back home. And then I went and had my place valued, and said, oh, I've made some money on this. I'm going to come home. But the Palladium's lovely, but it wasn't, you know, it was Backstage. Was God. Horrible. It was vile Backstage. The only 2 dressing rooms that were nice was number 1 and number 2. And they used to take the old carpets from, which were threadbare anyway, from the auditorium, and put them in the dressing rooms backstage. Backstage was horrible.
I've heard that the load in is quite difficult because there's no room, is there?
Yeah, well, you've only got that long passageway, and that's all changed now, because that was the stage door. Stage door was different. That was a fire exit where it is now. Years ago.
It's nice what they've done though.
Oh, it's lovely. The dressing rooms are lovely.
Never been
They were
in.
like suites. They're beautiful dressing rooms.
They've got to do, haven't they, for the Palladium?
They've got to. But a lot of the people who own them won't spend the money. They'll do the auditoriums, but they won't do backstage.
What?
There's no room backstage. It's tiny. It's a variety theatre. No wing space.
Yeah,
When I was doing Chitty there, I mean, everything was hoisted up on trucks, on chains in the wings. And you thought, if one of those drops when you're doing the quick changes, it'd be horrendous. And if it rained outside and the drains got flooded, all under stage gets flooded. They would never cancel the show. I always remember once, well, a couple of times, the drains got so blocked, they were putting bits of wood under the stage because you couldn't run it across the back. Everyone had to go under the stage across. That bits of wood across the water, it was water everywhere. And you had to run across. If you fell in, you were drenched. That's what it was like backstage.
The Glamour Theatre.
And the rats were horrendous. The rats. It had to have a company had to come in and take all the rats, shoveling them out.
You're not selling the Palladium to me anymore.
But that's when before Chitty, that's what it was like. But I spend a lot of time thinking about pantomime over the year. Sometimes I can't even sleep. My head's going round and round and round, just thinking of, oh, how will I do that? How will I make this? And who can do this? And where can I get like the fishbowl? How to get that? And trying to think of ideas, and it's quite hard, really, especially when you come back every year. I've got some ideas for this year, like I need to put them forward to Michael first, though.
Do you feel like you're letting people down if you're not on top of your game?
Yeah, sometimes you do. I mean, sometimes I'll get something and I think, oh, why did I have that made? I shouldn't have had that. Or I'm in the run of the pantomime and I think, oh, I should have had this done. This would have fitted in perfect, but it's too late 'cause you're in the run. Or something too close to rehearsals, and you cannot. And also you've got to get a slot in to get costume makers to make stuff, because now kudos are so big and getting stuff made is getting really hard. Because they have to like make Coltman does only comedy stuff, like the prop costumes. Well, he does everything for kudos now. So I spoke to him last week I said, well, I want some things made. He said, I always keep yours. Well, I always do yours, don't worry. I'll get them done.
What's it been like them working with the twins? Because they've had you flying quite a bit, haven't they?
Good. It's not any hassle. I mean, you feel safe. Nothing bothers me to be. I'm terrified of heights, you know.
Are you?
Yeah.
What about when you came out as the fairy godmother?
I don't know why that doesn't bother me. It doesn't seem real. But like going up the Empire State Building, I'm like, ooh. And what do you call it, the Eiffel Tower in Paris once? I always remember going up there and I thought, that's it, I've been up, I've got to come down now. All I kept thinking was, if I fell, where would this land, the end of this tower? I always remember that. I had one incident, the first time I ever flew, I was doing Panto in High Wycombe. And I came down as a chandelier, obviously not like the costume I had here, because it's obviously a lot more superior. And Mike Coltman made it, so it was beautiful. The one I made was a dress chandelier, still had hoops and all that, but no candles or anything like that. And I don't know who the company was who flew me up, but when I was up there, one of the wires snapped. So I come down with one wire, and then I said, that's it, I'm not doing it again. So I wouldn't refuse to do it.
And you've never flown?
No.
Since?
Unless it was like, who flies hours? Foy. I can't remember the company was years ago. They weren't an established company or anything. They weren't like Kirby's or High Fly.
We won't say that.
No. I can't remember who they were. But I've never had any problems with it. Doesn't bother me flying. I don't get worried. I think it's just when you're outside, that's when I'm more on a bridge or something like that. Inside doesn't bother me. But they're well experienced, the Royal Man. They're the best stage crew. They'll do anything for you. They're so good. And they're all nice. Everyone's nice backstage. It does help when everyone gets on really well. You never have any bad eggs.
It must be difficult though, because it is literally your Christmas, New Year.
Yeah, they're all the time. I don't leave the theatre. I go in there at 12 o'clock or half past 12, that sort of time. And I don't leave there till 10 o'clock-ish? I'm there all the time. That's why I take me fridge in, me microwave, me bed. I take everything in. And I don't have one of the principal dressing rooms, you know. Like Clive, like number 1, number 2, number 3, or what Steve, they're dressed, they're lovely, they're little, but I've got a big chorus dressing room of my own.
For all the dresses.
I mean, everybody else. Well, no, because of my costumes. Well, I used to do my costume changes in number 1 dressing room when they were number 1, because they were the closest to the stage, and Clive always had number 2. So I used to put all my changes in there. And then when they pulled all backstage the green room down, they got rid of number 1 and number 2, and they made a canteen sort of thing there. So number 1 and number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, the lovely dressing rooms, all on one level, the first level. They're all quite small. They've all got like little bed things in, and TV and fridge and everything. But I didn't have any of that. That's why I used to take all my own stuff in, because I would rather had a big dressing room. And also Michael comes in and falls asleep on my bed when he's knacked and he's got to moan about something or worried about something. It's always straight in my dressing room.
Is it quite tiring then, doing this? How many shows is it? About 92?
92 or 93 Pantos. Yeah, we do. It is tiring. The start of it's all right.
The adrenaline.
I just, it's just that the energy I use on stage is like, it's the running back and forth to the changes. It's the changes more than anything, you know, that makes me tired. The performance doesn't really tire me out, unless it's a dance routine or something like that. That's what tires me, the physically running back and forwards. And I'd like change. I mean, I don't change my tights like David Robbins and that, because I just don't. He's totally different from me. I love David Robbins. He's brilliant, Dame. But like I change my earrings and jewellery and shoes and that sort of thing. Everything. And if I'm late, it's because I forgot a glove. I'll run back to get the glove.
Is there anything you'd still like to do in pantomime?
Me? I'd like to do a cod ballet. I've never done a cod ballet. I'd like to do a routine with the babes. I know it's a bit old-fashioned, but it's never been done for years up here, so I'd quite like to do a routine with the babes.
I'd like to see you do song sheets.
Something. Oh, I hate doing song sheets.
Do you?
Yeah. I don't like... I like everything scripted. I can't ad-lib. That's just not me as a person. I couldn't compare a show. I couldn't. It's just not me at all. But like Daniel, talk to anyone. He's good. And Clive, because Clive's used to the clubland. You had to do that. Like Leah is the best compere. She'll talk about anything to anyone. Do you know what I mean? She's used to that. But I'm not like that. I've got to have everything scripted.
Would that make you nervous?
Very nervous, yeah. Yeah. I just don't like talking to an audience. Unless it's scripted. But I used to do song sheet for 4 or 5 years when I had to do it in pool panto with Michael Rose. He used to say, right, you can do the song sheet with somebody else. I just don't know what to ask the kids. And also the usherette sometimes used to send somebody up, and there was this guy came up and he looked so young, and I said, how old are you? I'm 21. Do you know what I mean? You want to say, well, what did you get for Christmas? Are you married? He'd probably say, yes, I've got 2 kids. And he got on the stage. He got up. 21 he was. I hated it.
Okay, I don't want to see you do song sheet then.
No, I'd be no good in a song sheet. I'll come on, give the prizes, and that's it. It's one story I remember. I was doing Crawley Panto Twanky, and I used to come on as a fairy liquid bottle, the costume. And I was a big space. I don't know why I was a space, I wasn't doing anything. And I remember being in the dressing room with the costume on, watching the telly. And the show was on. The show really was watching it. And I was about to walk over the bridge, walked over the bridge looking for a lad and everything. And that was a big... I thought, what's happened? I'm watching it. That was my entrance. I was not. I was watching it. I'll never forget that. That's the only time I've really missed a cue. I remember thinking, what's happened? And then looking into the wings and everything, and I go, well, she won't be long. Wait.
How long did it take you
And
then?
it was me. I always remember that.
How do you find the wordplay scenes?
What do you mean?
The very wordy things, such as the short sleeve shirt.
Those.
Not short sleeve shirts, or what was it this year? It was the Susie Shaw.
To be truthful, they're not that hard to learn. Okay. There was one of them which was cut, which was Mr. Who, Mr. What, and Mr. I Don't Know we were doing. And it was cut. That was more difficult than any of the other ones. The one we've just done, that wasn't really that hard to learn. I think it would have been more harder for Wayne to learn. Because he had the longest bits. I just had the next bit, do you know what I mean? But when I see them in the script, I dread them. I think, oh God, I can't learn this. Because I find learning scripts now really hard. They never used to be. They were really easy to learn. And songs I find hard to learn now. I've got to have them early and go through and over and over and over and over and over and over again. I've got to learn them. I just sit here with the script and my earphones in. Or I put them in the car. If I'm going somewhere, it goes straight into the car and I put it straight in the CD. And it goes in naturally then.
And do you find when the words are changed to popular songs?
Well, it does. It was like Be a Clown this year. I did, with Daniel Rue, the different version, but trying to change, those words were going in my head. But once I got into rehearsals with the MD and you go through it, it seems to go in. That production sticks in your head. You forget what you've done before. It doesn't when you're sat here months before and you've got the script, or weeks before. It doesn't go in because the old version's in your head. But it all seems to come real when you're in rehearsals.
Because I
hate rehearsals. I don't hate it. It's just it is tiring afterwards, and it's just going over and over and over. Do you know what I mean? But like some directors, you get into rehearsal and you spend half the day just going through your script, sitting reading it. I hate that. Michael doesn't do that. You go straight in with a kill, and that's why I love Michael. And Michael's got so many good ideas, and everything changes. Oh, we'll do this. Oh, we'll do this. Because when you're with everyone might say, "Oh, can we do this? Can I change this?" So it's never the full script, the same script when you get it, when the end product. It's always a bit different.
Do you put much in?
Nah, I'm not very. I don't come up with new bits and pieces. Not a lot. Michael just got so many good ideas. I don't know how his brain works. 24 hours a day. It's just constantly going all the time. I mean, he's got all this year thinking constantly. I mean, I know for a fact he's got Edinburgh nearly written and Birmingham nearly written. It's only March. But Clive and Daniel they'll start coming in with ideas now. I think he's probably got a few ideas. But it's so hard trying to think of new stuff. And I haven't got a brain like that. I can't think like that because it just doesn't come. I think of old sketches, what old dames and people have done years and years and try and change bits. But like we don't have an opening. Like I don't have an opening spot now like we used to years ago. I'll come on, but the audience know who I am. So I just have to say that catchphrase and they say it, and then you're straight into the dialogue of a bit of a sketch or whatever, which I prefer. I hate it when someone comes on, then they go off and then somebody else comes on. I hate that. It's so old-fashioned. Do you know what I mean? It's the old variety bits coming doing your bit. I'd rather get into the storyline. And then let Clive and Danny do their sketches.
What's been your favourite entrance?
My favourite entrance... You know what? My favourite panto to start with, I loved doing Fairy Godmother and Cinderella. At first when Michael said, you can do... I was a bit, but I like doing it. Keeps the story together a bit. And you've still got all your entrances, and the frocks are all glam. And I can wear one wig right through. So I haven't changed in headdresses. Keep the same wig, just change the frocks and shoes and jewellery. What was this question? Oh, entrance.
Entrance.
I loved my hot air balloon in the first Cinderella when I came down in that. I liked that entrance. I liked that. And I liked the Metro when I used to come on. I think it was Robin Hood when I came in the Metro. When the doors opened, that was good. Then I think they're my favourite ones.
There's so much fun though to be had with Newcastle because of just the area and what it means to everybody.
That's it.
As well.
There's so many different districts and different parts of Newcastle that can involve all that. The rough areas and the nice areas and the working class areas and certain shops you can go to and like I loved Dick Whittington when I was like Mrs. Fitzfenwick. I like the way he'd done that because the audience feel involved. They know it. But you know, years ago, apparently, Newcastle Theatre Royal was never like that. The Empire was like that. That was the local pantomime. First class panto, but the Theatre Royal was the big posh, which I suppose would have been like the Palladium in those days, because they were Howard and Bindon pantos. They spent so much money on their productions years ago. I'd love to go back 60, 70 years ago to see what a pantomime was like at the Theatre Royal.
It's wonderful, that bit on the top floor now, isn't it? With the
it is. But I've got a friend who's 97 now in London who did Goldilocks and Three Bears in 1936 at the Theatre Royal. She was in the chorus. She was 16 or 17. And there was a full water tank where the dancers dived in on stage.
Wow.
And it was at the back of the stage where the twins keep the arms. And it was a tank of water. And they used to push it down on wheels that had wedges under. And the dancers, when they had an audition, they all had to have their bronze medal, swimming medal, school medal. And that's how she got, because she could dive and she could swim. And 8 of the dancers used to go into the pool, and you never seen them come up because there was a tunnel at the back. They used to have to swim through the tunnel, and the stagehands used to pull them through behind the cloth. So the audience never knew. I don't know how that fitted in. She can't remember. But then I said, well, are you sure it was Goldilocks? But I've got a book on Howard and Wyndham, and when you look, 1936, It's Goldilocks of Three Bears with Bert Brownlow as the dame in it. And also she's got a photograph with 36 dancers all in a line on the stage.
At the Theatre Royal.
They were the dancers, 36 dancers.
How many can it fit? How many would you say it fits now? Comfortably.
I don't know. Well, 8, because the choreography is totally different from what it was. In those days, it was all lines, and you didn't do patterns like choreographers do these days. I don't think you could do that with 36 on that stage now.
People are bigger as well.
Yeah, true. And also on stage right, you had no wing space. You literally have that space to about there. That was the width until Michael got in touch with the council and they bought the property next year, the bank, and they knocked all that in. So we've got big dock space. You never had that years ago. It's only since Michael came along they did that. So you think, where did they all go? What were the dressing rooms like?
Crazy
Totally
time.
different generation.
Crazy
Like my
time.
Auntie Helen, who was the dancer there in the 40s and 30s, her daughter, my Auntie Terry, who's 74, 5 now or something, she was in the last pantomime Auntie Helen did. She was just a baby in arms, and she used to take the baby and she used to leave her in the dressing room in a cot. When the dancers was on stage with her dancing, and she'd go back, and the dresser used to keep an eye on her.
Can you imagine that now?
Couldn't do that now. She used to do that, take the baby up. My Auntie Terry used to be up there just after she was born.
Do you think it was simpler times though back then?
In what way?
In terms of less
There was no
rigmarole
health and
now.
safety, anything. There was no health and safety. But I also remember her telling me, she said, there was a film called The Queen of Hearts with Gracie Fields. It was massive. And as soon as the film was finished, Howard and Wyndham bought the costumes. And those costumes were used in the Panto, but I don't know which the Panto was. Up at Royal. Because she said all the labels had the Queen of Hearts. And the wardrobe mistress said these have come direct from the film because they were brand new. They'd only been used once for the film. And the crinolines were static, the hoops, but they were solid. You had to put them over your head. And the dressers used to lower them on pulleys in the wings, take them all off, and the girls had to put over their heads and put them on their waist, and then the dress went over the top. They were kept in the wings because they were so big. Well, if you watch the film, The Queen of Hearts, when they do the Queen of Hearts, and all the girls have got these big solid crinolines on, and I think, well, they must have been the costumes that me Auntie Helen wore.
Wonder where they are now.
I know.
Do you find you get your influences looking back at the old sort of MGM?
Yeah, I
big
get a lot.
productions and
I
things?
do watch a lot of YouTube clips, and I've got a lot of old books, MGM films. I try to get costume designs and just pinch ideas. It gets harder and harder every year. Thinking.
Which designers influenced you?
I loved Terry Parsons. I like Hugh Lloyd. Hugh Darrant. I mean, that Babes in the Wood he did at the Palladium was absolutely stunning. It was beautiful. I don't know, because I liked Terry Scott and Billy Dainty and Stanley Baxter. I loved all of their sort of costumes, and they were all done by Terry Parsons. I liked him. And also, he used to use a lot of glitter on his sets. I love glitter. Anything shiny. Because that's the first thing that I remember seeing as a kid, going to see a show, was the glitter, where you didn't see that at home. I never seen glitter, or my mum didn't have a Lame sequin dress, anything like that. It was all on stage or on TV. And seeing it in real life, that stuck in my head.
What would be your advice then for upcoming dames?
Just go for it, but don't do it because you like wearing a frock and wearing a wig, and do you know what I mean? Because that's a different ball game, that.
You've got to
And
believe
also,
it, yeah?
you've got to believe in it, And I think being a dame as a young person, you'll realise when you get a bit older. Because I do. I mean, when I was young, I think, oh, I'll do this and I'll do that. I knew when I was first with a Twanky, I thought, I'm too young for this. I didn't feel comfortable. When I was doing it, I thought, oh, I'm doing it, I'm getting paid for it, and I'm working with the Chuckle Brothers, who were really well established, and it was all like that. And I loved the experience. And they did teach me bits and pieces, and the director taught me a lot. He did. I just think go for it, but just don't be too glamorous. You're not a drag act, you're trying to be a dame. But my dame is not like the traditional sort of dame. It's a character now, isn't it? I've got my own stamp. I mean, some people say, oh, you're not a dame. And I'm not bothered. I'm not a drag act. Do you know what I mean? I've got my own dame, and it's always going to be me.
It is unique.
I mean, people do try to copy, and because I've seen them, I know them. But I'm me. They're not going to be me. There's only one me. Say when people pinch ideas of costume, everyone's pinched ideas for costumes. Everybody, and gimmicks and gags and people. Well, I invented that, and I think, well, you didn't. There's some things I can see now. Years ago, my grandmother, who would be 100 and odd now, they did it in the 20s, and they were nowhere around in the 20s. Do you know what I mean? Nothing's new. It just all comes round in circles.
What would you say is the costume that you aspire to?
You mean like what, character costumes, like me bag or things like that?
Yeah, you say you love the bag, but is there anything that you still want to do?
I find nowadays finale costumes use more feathers because you tend to go more like to the showgirl, because audience love that big massive feather glamorous sort of costume.
Your Peter Pan last year.
Yeah, like years ago you didn't have that. You'd have a crinoline, a powdered wig. If it was in Cinderella, do you know what I mean? You just had that. I mean, I love glamorous costumes, and you feel good in a glamorous costume because it's a bit like the wow factor when you come down. The women go, oh, look at that. It's like...
Does that still get you?
Yeah, I would say Ziegfeld costumes. That I do look at them, but I've seen them all now. There's nothing really you can copy off them. Unless somebody's got some pictures and they've been locked away for 50, 60, 70 years, they've just come out for everyone to see.
Have you been to the V&A?
Yeah, not lately, not since Danny LaRue's costume was put, the Aladdin and Nigel Ellicott's ugly sister. I've not been since they've gone in. But I used to love going to see costumes, and I do like costumes, I love it. I love costumes through different generations as well. I've got some, when I was making costumes, I've got some really good books I bought in New York, and I'll go through ideas. I thought, oh, well, that was, 17, whatever. I'll go down that lane for the big puffed sleeves and short cuffs and those sort of things. I do look at those sort of pictures just to get ideas. But I have to go with stuff that suits me as well, costume-wise. I do like wearing a crinoline, a short crinoline. Well, not short, but where you can see ankles. I'm not into big crinolines. I had one when I think Jack and the Beanstalk. It was a nightmare to get into for the finale, but that was a nice costume. But I don't like, I'm not one like I'll sit one keeping that, I'm keeping that. I just think, I'll finish with that, get rid of it. I used to be like that. I'm not that like that now. I'll get rid of everything. I think, why bother keeping it?
Not going to recycle, are you?
No. I'm not here, I can't. I can't.
Does that have much pressure on you, though, to actually try and outdo yourself each year?
It gets hard. It does a bit of a pressure because you think, oh, what am I going to do, and how are you going to top next year? But you always come up with the ideas, or somebody will say, oh, why don't you do this? And you think, oh, yeah. Like somebody mentioned something the other day, and then I thought of that, but then something else came. I thought, well, that's a better idea, but it's similar. So I just need to speak to Michael.
You're a scribbler then, just constantly making notes. And
I've got a pad and I just write all bits and pieces down.
Middle of the night.
As often I've woke up in the middle of the night and I've thought of something and I have to come in here and I'll jot it down, because otherwise just my memory's terrible now. I'm always forgetting. Always. So I'll just jot it down. That's the way I work. And I used to draw everything out properly years ago. Draw a proper picture, and I don't do that now. I just scribble out. Like I say to James, I say, well, you know that picture, the book of I did Jack and the Beanstalk, that, well, I want that skirt, but I want these big puff sleeves, I want them to go at the elbow, and I want a long cuff, and that's what I do.
Do you find audiences are a bit more sensitive these days with this whole political correct thing?
Yeah, now they are. Totally, I think they are. Yeah. It's just gone mad. But then I think America's done that, because America was like that years ago. You could sue anybody for anything years ago. And it's just come over the pond, really, to England. Now England's like that. Never used to be like that.
Did you ever get offended by anything?
Never. No. Not at all, no.
It's a shame that people try and create something from nothing.
Oh, totally.
Any objections? Have you ever had anything when you performed and anybody's been...
Nobody's ever been offended at what I've said or done on stage or anything like that. I've never had any letters. I think once somebody wrote in once when I had those droopy boobs once, the complaint. I think that was one thing. Because I think I'd said to her, I said, oh, you must feel the same way as I feel, was bouncing the boobs up and down. And I think they wrote a letter to the theatre manager.
Oh, dear.
But we never get to hear everything, so you don't know what is written and what's not written.
They do look after you, though, at the theatre world, don't they?
Oh, God, yeah, they're lovely. Everyone's dead nice. It's like going back home. See, even when I go in now and I see all those charettes or the stage doormen or wherever, you just go in. It is like being home. Everyone's just so friendly. The only thing is that there's some little charettes who you still see and you've seen them for years and years. And God, they're still here. Other times you go and you think, I haven't got a clue who they are, because they're just like students, or it's their little odd jobs they've got to make a bit of money and you don't know who they are. Like the box office is different now, because it's... I remember years ago I got quite friendly with the box office women when I used to go and buy a ticket when I was little and go and watch a kids show in the Guards, and you got to know them. But the box office is where that little wine bar is at the side, and all the pigeonholes of the tickets. Pardon me. I used to always get restricted view in the upper circle. At the same, I always got the same seats, always. Like when I seen Barry Stacey, who was a producer, and always used to come up for a week. 2 weeks he did a year. I think he used to do either Pinocchio or Snow White and Seven Dwarfs. I always used to go and see those shows. But I used to go and see the shows with my nan. She used to take me. Like I seen Danny LaRue. I seen him with her, and George and Mildred. That when they used to come touring, and the first My Fair Lady, I think, was the first musical I ever went to see. But I used to go and see the ballet. And my auntie Irene and my nan took me to the Swan Lake, I think it was. No, it wasn't. It was the Nutcracker. And my cousin was at a ballet school up in Morpeth, and I went with her. And my auntie and my nan, we all went on a bus trip to see it. And I remember afterwards, we were taken backstage. I always remember that was the first time ever backstage then. And I must have only been about 8. That was the first time ever. But I remember thinking, God, it's dirty here. I mean, it was dirty. It was dirty.
Is there anything you don't like about the business?
No, not really. There's a lot of bitchiness goes on in show business.
Is there?
It's always
Never.
I don't like that side of it. But no, there's nothing I don't like about it. Some people are really grand. I think there's no need to be grand. Just be yourself. Demanding. I hate people like that. I can't be bothered with people like that. That's all I don't like about it, really.
In your favourite parts?
The performing side. I love the performing side of it. I love that. I like nice people. I like people to get on with. I hate it when some people don't give 100%. That annoys me. And I mean, there's many a time I've been in the wings of the Royal and I've had a bucket on each side of the stage and I've had tissues and I've physically been sick in the wings. Or, like, I remember when I did Snow White, I did my leg in and I was going for acupuncture twice a week and having a bit of physio on me, but I never went off. I wouldn't dream of going off. Not because the understudy's going to be better, I just don't... I'm one of those people always go on. If I've got a splitting headache or toothache, I've gone on with toothache before. I would never go off. I think even if I broke my leg, I'd still gone on with a wheelchair. I would. That's just the way I feel about it. I'd just...
Never missed a performance then?
Touch wood, never. I mean, the first year my mum died, the Latin, I was so looking forward to seeing the Panto and everything, but obviously couldn't. And the day she died, I still went home. We had the funeral in the morning, and I went and did the matinee. And everyone says, how could you do that? How could you just go and do it? But that year, I can't remember a lot of that pantomime because in rehearsals was hard because I'd finished rehearsals at 6 o'clock or wherever, and I'd jump straight in my car and go straight to the General Hospital to see her, or where was it? No, the RVI she was in. No, it was the General the first time. Oh, anyway, whatever, I can't remember. And then I'd come home, make dinner for my dad and Gary, my brother, and then go to bed, straight up in the morning, go straight to rehearsals, straight after rehearsals, back to the hospital. It was all like, and then when she came home, it was see after the panto and what have you, and then get up and go do the matinee. So I had the funeral in the morning, I'd do the matinee, Gary came up with the car, still had my makeup on, took my bottom bit of makeup, my lips, I always take the bottom half off. And came back, had the wake at my dad's, seen all the family, and then taxi took me straight back to the night show. And that's how I got through it, really. I would never have missed the show. I wouldn't. It was like when my nan died, I came up, I took a couple of days off and came up to see her. I was there when she died, but then they didn't know when the funeral was going to be, and it went on, and I thought, I've got to get back because I'm doing a show in town and everything. Mm-hmm. And then when they said the funeral was, I couldn't really take the time off to come. I mean, my nan was the closest person to me because she got me into this business. And I just, in the morning, I went to a church where I lived, said a few prayers and everything, and then I went and did the show that night. But I was there when she died, and the funeral was just, to me, once you've died, they've died. I don't know, that's just the way I feel. I mean, I'm a Catholic and everything, and I believe in God and that, but I don't go to church or anything. Like, I used to always get really friendly with all the theatre chaplains. Every theatre used to have a chaplain. They don't seem to have them now. And they always used to come to the wardrobe or come and say, how are you? And it was all a bit chit-chat and everything, and you don't get that now. But show business is totally different now. It's totally different. Really different.
Well, it comes to that point of the podcast where I'm going to ask you the biggest question of them all.
What?
Your dream panto cast. So,
what panto is it?
You can choose your panto.
Dame-wise...
Would you want to be in it, though? That's the thing. Or do you want to be sitting in the store?
No, I'd like to watch it.
You choose anything you want.
Oh, God. I'd love to have seen John Inman and Barry Howard as Ugly Sisters. But also I'd love to have seen Danny LaRue and Anne Haynes as Ugly Sisters. They're the two sisters.
Can I have 4 sisters?
4 sisters, aye. Who else would there be? Buttons. Oh, God. I can't think. I'll have to come back to that one. Prince. Joyce Blair, Lionel Blair's sister, was a nice principal boy as a prince. Not as like Dick Whittington or Jack. I think if it was Dick Whittington or Jack or Aladdin or something, it would be Barbara Windsor. Mm-hmm. But Fairy Godmother and Cinderella, I loved Barbara Windsor's Fairy Godmother. She's a nice Fairy Godmother. Baron, I'd love to have seen Arthur Askey as Baron. Who else is there? Cinderella? Oh, God, Cinderella. I wouldn't have a clue.
Let's go Dandini instead, to begin with.
Dandini. It's been Nita Harris or someone like that. I like those principal boys. I like girls as principal boys. You can't do it now, it's a different generation. Who else? Who else is in it? I can't even think.
We've got the Baron, we've got...
The Baron, Ugly Sisters.
What about Wicked Stepmother?
You see, when I was young, they never had Wicked Stepmothers. You never had Wicked Stepmothers in Cinderella then. You always just had the sisters.
Your Panto?
You know who I liked as Wicked Stepmother? Sue Douglas, who I did 2 Cinderellas, but she was good. I liked her. I get on really well with Sue.
So it's now your cinders and your
Cinderella. Buttons, as I liked years as a kid, was Dickie Henderson. I always liked Dickie Henderson. And I remember Hugh Lloyd as Buttons as well years ago in Cinderella here. He just stick in my mind. I don't know why, but he always does. Cinderella. I liked Maureen Nolan when I did Cinderella with Maureen Nolan years ago. She was at Canterbury. She was a lovely Cinderella. She was quite nice. I can't really think of any famous, really famous.
They don't have to be famous. It's yours.
Well, my favourite Cinderella I've ever worked with has been Laura Evans at Newcastle. I love working with Laura.
Brilliant voice.
I know. I like Laura Evans. I would say Laura Evans. Another Buttons, I like Paul Zerdner's Buttons as well now. He's good Buttons. But the old ones, I would say Dickie Henderson and Hugh Lloyd. Because I remember seeing them years ago.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with the Panto podcast.
You're welcome.